very brightly colored and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while.
We want to be free to do what we want to
Two
do.
were Muhammad Ali and Sonny Barker, the president of Hell's Angels.
This is 1095.
He was lonely. He was suffering. We had to free him. What does it take to relocate an elephant across the entire continent of Asia? Join me on a mission to set a wild thing free.
Do you believe in miracles?
It's been a while.
Has been a while, a few years, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has been a few years.
Especially with COVID as well. Have we started, by the way?
We have, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it has been, especially with COVID, it's, suddenly you realize a whole year or a year and a half has gone by before you've been to a place, or like I haven't been back to China since December 2019.
Wow. So you were living there. I mean, that was where you were based, kind of doing your work and directing and filming. And so you kind of jumped out of there and didn't get back.
I was my official base has always been Hong Kong, but I was kind of staying up in China a lot and kind of more or less living there. But as soon as this COVID thing happened, it's changed everything, because then I just couldn't get back. But yes, I was up there. I've always wanted to live in China because I 20 odd years ago, I started doing documentaries on China and started to learn quite a lot about its culture and its geography, its history, its people. And, traveling there just made me fascinated with it. And then a few years ago, I just realized, what, if I don't go now, when am I going to go? So I know quite a lot of people in Shanghai. I had been working up there quite a bit. So I decided to move from Singapore and try out Shanghai, which was great. Really enjoyed it. Fantastic city to live in. Very different from Singapore.
Well, we'll talk about a few of these things because it's really interesting for, the listeners. I mean, actually, how did you end up doing work? You were doing work over in Asia many years ago, right? In terms of as a director, as a filmmaker.
I came to Hong Kong in 1994.
Okay.
With a job at Star TV in Hong Kong, which is part of News Corp. It's part of Sky, Fox, that family of TV companies, which now been bought by Disney, I believe. But anyway, so back in 94, yes, it was Star TV. It was a very sort of enterprising, multi-channel TV platform that, it's very enterprising in nature. It was breaking new ground back in those days. And it was full of very enterprising people, high quality individuals as well. I mean, I just learned so much being there over about 8 years. And it was a great place to work. We broadcast from Hong Kong at Clearwater Bay, all over Asia, as far as the Middle East in one direction, as far as I think you could even get it in Australia, at that point, in Japan, Korea, China, India, everything in between. So it was, and my job was head of network production services. So I serviced all the channels, all the senior management for any projects that were kind of special projects. And so we got reasonable budgets to do things, and quite a lot of creative leeway. And then I sort of went off and shot things in places like India and China and Indonesia and so on for weeks on end. It was great.
I mean, it's still exciting doing that stuff now, but I think back in the mid-90s, it would have been a lot more exciting because, it was different then. People were flying around, but now, taking COVID out of the picture, because obviously the last year is different again. But back in the 90s, it must have been really exciting doing that work and jumping around the region and working on different projects, I imagine.
Well, it was. I mean, I was less traveled back in those days, so it was all much newer to me as well. I still find it exciting, by the way. But, there were so many places I had never been back then. And for example, going to India in those days, in the sort of mid 90s, was a much different experience than it is now. Certainly when just the arrival, back then, now they've got brand new airports, which are world class. You look at Mumbai airport, it's unbelievable. Delhi airport, the same. but back in those days, they were ramshackled, sort of old, really
I was there in the mid
worn down
90s.
kind of
I remember
places.
it in the mid 90s. I remember that airport.
You come out of the airport and it's just total chaos in front of you. And the first time you go there, it is quite overwhelming. And the smell of the place hits you. I don't mean bad smell. I just mean a smell, it just has its own smell. Same with Indonesia. And it's just this mass of humanity greets you, and it's just total chaos.
I remember arriving in Delhi, and I think the first, because I went to India, I think I got there in 92 or something it was. I went on a 3-month trip, first time out of the UK, hottest day in India, pasty ginger lad dropped in Delhi in 45-degree heat. It was just, I mean, it was, you can imagine, because you'd have, if you were around those places at that time, it's pretty kind of manic sensory experience, right? Being dropped into India.
Sensory overload.
Yeah, for sure.
When you get to India.
And of course, I mean, I was going to leave this till later, but let's chat about it now as we're on that part of the world. Of course, you just kind of been back there. I mean, not India, but Pakistan. And I watched, Son, my girlfriend, I watched your most recent documentary last week, which was great. The Share and the Loneliest Elephant. Did I get the title right? I did.
You did.
Which was, I mean, it was great. Interestingly, it had us a bit teary. And there was a couple of things. I mean, actually, for me, although it's Share and the Loneliest Elephant, the real character actually was the Indian chap that became, really kind of befriended the elephant, and was, I mean, there was a number of people in that team. But maybe before I talk about it too much, do you want to just give us a quick brief on what it was about and how it all came about?
Okay, so to answer, I'll break that into two things: then what it's about versus how it came, and then how it came about. So, what it's about? It's about the saving of Kavan, who's a 35-year-old elephant in Margaza Zoo in Islamabad, Pakistan. He had been in that zoo. Well, he'd been in the zoo. He was the first one in there 35 years ago. They opened the zoo for him, I believe, and he was the last one out because they've closed the zoo down now. But he basically languished there, and I think he was the mahouts. That's the elephant keepers. Some of them, I think they thought they were sort of treating him well, but they just don't have the expertise really to know. They think that whipping them with a stick to get them to do stuff is okay, but it's just not. And then they gave him an elephant partner from Bangladesh, but she died because she was in chains and the gangrene set in, it went through her body and she died. So he was on his own for at least a decade after that. And then they put him in chains because he became depressed and a little bit violent, and not surprisingly. So really the story's about his rescue, but the bigger picture is, about elephants in captivity in the first place. And then the bigger picture yet is wild animals in captivity in the first place. So that's kind of more or less what it's about. The drama unfolds over about a period of about 8 weeks prior to the actual rescue. The day we actually got him out of Pakistan by plane, and I was there the entire. Well, I mean, the vets had been there; they were there already, and I got there with my film crew. We shot locally with. We shot with a local film crew as well, and they were my support team, and we were there every day for 8 weeks until we got him out. And obviously there's some days which are big days, some days there's not so much to shoot, so we might have only gone to the zoo for an hour. For example, there was one Sunday where there wasn't much. Dr. Amir went there, but I didn't necessarily film him that day. It was pouring with rain. It was very a miserable day. It was the only day we got like that really in the entire 8 weeks. And so visually, I just wanted to get something a bit different from the zoo. So we just went there and filmed for an hour and a half or something, just got some shots of Kavan swaying, the rain falling on his in the puddles and dripping off the fence, and some imagery like that. And then a much more substantial day would have been the move day itself, which we were there at 7 a.m., filmed there all day till he was basically in his crate and ready to be taken from the zoo. Then we filmed the move from the zoo to the airport, the tarmac, the getting the crate into the crane, and then the plane took off at 4 a.m. the following morning. So it's a big day. And then I didn't sleep on the plane. I was just filming. I wasn't filming every minute of the journey. There wasn't a huge amount to film, but that was a very big shooting day. So the days vary.
Were you on that plane? Were you on the same plane? Were you with the elephant?
Yes, there was myself, Dr. Amir, who is Egyptian actually. So Dr. Amir and his team, which was one other vet, his assistant, and a media guy. So there's 4 of them plus me, and then the Russian pilots and there, like a couple of crew members. That's it. We were on the plane with the elephant, and we were just in the same space with the elephant. He was just right beside me, basically.
Yeah, it was a great. I mean, when you shoot something like that as a director, I mean, in a project, I mean, are you kind of emotionally involved in it in the process, or are you just attached and shooting it as a documentary? Is it a bit of both? I mean, do you take something away at a heart level with a project like that?
Oh, big time. I mean, you can't be there 8 weeks and see the development of the story and all the difficulties they went through, all the challenges they faced, and not be, you start by sort of, being a little bit shocked by hearing things or surprised by hearing things, and you're having a dinner with these people after, at the end of the day, or a drink or something like that. And you start rooting for them. You want it to succeed, and then you start to see things like the bond of Amir and Kavan. And I remember when I interviewed Amir at the end, just as he was about to say goodbye to Kavan, and I was so emotional I could hardly get the question out. And that was
the part that
made it worse for him.
That was the part that hit, I think, someone I watching it. That was when it was good from a TV point of view, because you really saw the realness of it. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you genuinely, you could see he had a real connection to this animal, and yeah, it was emotional. I did want to see were you doing all the questioning? Were you behind the camera? Were you questioning? Were you directing? What was your kind of element to those parts of the story then?
I did all the interviews. So I was asking all the questions. What I would do is I would just set up because I shot it as well as directed it. So
you were holding the camera and directing, or you were directing and you had a first AD or another cameraman with you?
So a mixture. So for example, with interviews, what I would do is I'd set up the shot, get it nicely framed, sit the person in, just check, and then I would let someone else operate the camera to record. And if the sun suddenly came out, then that person would know just to stop down a little bit, so we didn't become overexposed and so on. But then I just stopped worrying about that, because I know the framing's good. I trust the guy who's got his hands on the camera, and I just concentrate on asking the questions. And then with things like that move day that I just explained.
Yep.
So that day was total chaos, trying to get Kavan from his training crate into the transport crate. As you would have seen, there was hundreds of news crews there from all over the world. It was a chaotic day even without that, but that just added to the drama of the whole thing. So to do that properly, you really need at least 2 cameras. So I was shooting everything that was close up next to the crate, with close-ups of Dr. Amir, the elephant. I was constantly moving around it. And then I had another camera roving around, getting shots of the journalists and the TV crews and other cutaway stuff. So where there was big action stuff, we had 2 or 3 cameras, a drone as well sometimes, all at the same time.
Cool.
I brief them what to do, and then I just trust that they're going to do it, and then I can't be checking what they're doing. By then, we've already been working together for weeks, so they kind of knew my style and how I wanted to shoot it. And you know, I would just concentrate on the shots I knew I needed to get.
There of course was the Thailand connection as well to Elephant Nature Park. I think she was on there for a bit. Now I wondered whether there'd been consideration of the elephant coming here. What was the Cambodia? Do you know, or is that another part of the story in terms of the decision to go to Cambodia? What was there? Don't think it covered why in the documentary, but was there a particular reason that it ended up Cambodia? Or it was just a suitable kind of national park for the elephant?
I don't know the answer, to be honest. So whatever I say, I would be speculating a little bit.
Fair enough.
There is a connection between the Cambodia Wildlife Sanctuary and the Elephant Nature Park.
Okay.
Derek, who is Lex's husband, he's based in Thailand, as you know, at the Elephant Nature Park. But he doesn't live in Cambodia, but he is in Cambodia now. And he is basically he was the one that received Kavan and became responsible for basically rehabilitating him back from being a zoo elephant to a semi-wild elephant in a sanctuary. When I say semi-wild, I mean he can't really leave the sanctuary, but the sanctuary is a massive place. It's proper forest and everything, so it's as good as. Oh, it's the next best thing to being wild. You know, he's free to roam, forage for his own food, communicate with other elephants. He can go and have a swim and roll around in the mud and just do his own thing and properly do what elephants do, which, you know, they walk many kilometers every day. In a zoo, you can't do that. They need interesting stuff around them. They need to work for their food because they're big units, right?
Yeah.
You can't just give them sugarcane all day and just let them sort of wander 50 meters up and down their enclosure. That's just no good at all. They're never going to burn those calories off, and it's very unstimulating for their minds as well.
Well, it was, I mean, and that place was really well equipped because not only did it have all that national park, but they had this great kind of big enclosure, and it looked like a staged process of reintroduction to
that's
wildlife.
That's basically the quarantine. I think, I don't know if it's stage 1 of his rehabilitation. You can't just take him from being a zoo animal and put him in the forest straight away. He wouldn't know what to do. And they also need to monitor his health and his weight and his mental well-being and all of that. So it's a lengthy process. You know, he got there I think it was the 30th of November last year. That was the day he landed in Cambodia. And he's still in that first stage, and stages 2 and 3 will stage 2, when he goes into the next enclosure, will be, I think, at the end of May, beginning of June, and then might be another sort of 3 or 4 months, 6 months even, before he goes properly into the wild part of the sanctuary, where he will depend less. He won't depend on humans at all. At that point, he'll just be roaming around.
Awesome. I mean, a cool story. Well done. I mean, great to be part of something like that, and really
amazing.
Good to watch. And I think the great thing about it was, before I watched it, I kind of thought, they're going to use the kind of share was instrumental in it, but I thought, they might just from a TV point of view use that, but they didn't actually. It was really nicely presented the way you put it forward, and you know, her role was well demonstrated, but they didn't kind of go, it's all about Cher. It was like, you know, they just showed what she did, and then the trainers, everyone was well represented in terms of their roles, which I thought was good filmmaking in terms of documenting the actual story. I did have to Google Cher's age. I was like, I nearly fell off my chair when, you know, because she looks about 50, which she of course isn't, because I was thinking she's definitely not only a couple of years older than me, but she's doing very well for the age she is. Did you get to kind of, have dinner, chew the fat, get to chat to her?
Well, she turned up with 15 people, so that was a bit tricky. But and of course, she was only there really for a couple of days. And then she flew ahead to Cambodia by one day. We landed, then we had a day in quarantine, a day really. So she went to the sanctuary with Kavan when he landed. I had to go straight into hotel quarantine. So there were, in the end, I probably only had like 3 or 4 days with her, and she did her own thing in the evening. But I spent a reasonable amount of time with her. I had to brief her on what we were doing and direct her on set, and she's asked me questions. I said that we discussed what we were going to do, and I did the master interview with her at the sanctuary and so on. And that was like a sort of hour and a half interview, just talking one-on-one with her. So that was that was interesting. It was good.
I mean, the other thing, the fact you managed to make this at the time you did, I mean, literally, such a challenging time to be, and fair play to her, because most, I think there's COVID, and then there's the fear factor of COVID, and the fact that she got on a plane, came over, was part of it is good to see, because it, I imagine that added another level of complication in terms of crew and logistics and everything else, shooting something at a time where people are struggling with the virus and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you're dead right. There was 2 things. One was COVID, so I mean, hats off to her that she actually did get on the plane and come during that time, because she is 74, and we're a bit younger. So I mean, I did get COVID. I think I told you that. But I wasn't. Yeah,
I wasn't going to. I didn't know whether you want to mention it, but you got it on the way through, right, with this process. So yeah.
Well, I got it right at the beginning of the Pakistan leg of the shoot. But then the second thing with Cher was the security. And honestly, to tell you the truth, it's up to her, because she's the one that's got to feel comfortable. But if she had no security at all, I'm sure no one would have known. She could have just come in a normal car, gone to the zoo.
Yeah.
It drew a lot of attention to her, having been surrounded by ex-military.
So those 15 were all security?
No. The security was on top of that.
Oh,
so
wow.
She came with 15 people, just her entourage.
Yeah.
And then there was a security team on top of that flew in from the main guys from the UK, but he had people coming from Argentina and all over the place.
Wow, there's another documentary in there somewhere. I mean, that in itself is an interesting story. That the life of these security people who look after the rich and the famous. Very interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, they assessed what we were going to shoot. They got there ahead of her, obviously, but only by a couple of days. And I wanted to take her to this. I mean, we were in a 5-star hotel. That's where we were based. She stayed in the same hotel as us. The zoo's 10 minutes away. And it's a diplomatic city. So it's very hard even to get to where we are in the hotel. It's not like just anyone can drive up. And then when you get to the gate, you can't get in unless you're staying there or you're cleared or whatever. So it's quite secure anyway. But then I wanted to take her to this village called Saidpur village, which is a proper village, and it's where Kavan's first elephant keeper, his first keeper, lived. And I wanted to take her there, which we did, and she went. She was happy to go there. I made her walk through the village. People slaughtering goats to the left and to the right as it was going on. It was got quite good footage of that.
Awesome. Wow, man. Yeah, well done. I mean, I think it sounds like a rewarding project as well. I mean, obviously it's a rewarding project, being able to be part of the crew and, in a process of freeing an elephant. So yeah, cool. It's I mean, any other projects on the horizon that you can mention in that kind of vein, in the kind of social space, or anything else you're doing around that?
Well, I'm not sure if I can really say too much about it, but more on elephants, with a little bit more with Elephant Nature Park and Cambodia Wildlife Sanctuary, for sure. So that will be a much bigger project. It'll be multi-episode thing, and it's the nature of it is similar, but it won't involve international transport of elephants. It's just within Thailand and Cambodia.
Cool. Well, it's
So
an
that will be
interesting, it's an interesting space. I mean, what you touched on before, I mean, that whole, when you just at the beginning of this conversation, or this part of the conversation, I mean, that this whole sector, if you want to call it that, I mean, you know, people now know it's not good to hit elephants. It's not good to ride elephants. It, you know, not everyone, but it seems to be kind of common knowledge. And these, you know, like the park in Cambodia, like Lex, I mean, there's two up here. I mean, they are everywhere now, which is great to see. There's been a whole kind of movement around elephant sanctuaries versus elephant riding. And I don't know where they'll end up, whether they will eventually, you know, put those elephants back into the wild, but the sanctuaries themselves are vast in terms of, you know, the size and the wildlife containment. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting space.
Yes, and you know, the truth is, if we had made this film without Cher, not many people would have.
Yeah,
it would have been seen. It would have been a nice film, but it wouldn't have necessarily got the global platform that it has. So, without even trying, that's what she brings to it. She brings it to a very big audience worldwide, just because she's in it, and that's as much as anything her contribution. She the level to which she brings it just brings an awareness to it, to the general public. People who kind of had half an interest in it would tune in and watch it and become more interested in it, and they would realize it isn't okay to ride elephants and make them paint pictures and stand on their back legs and do tricks and stuff like that.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's just, this is the reality of it, right? Of filmmaking. I mean, you get a big name, it, you know, it's everything, whether it's movies, whether it's documentaries, whatever it is. I mean, it just helps to, you know, get the audience, create the awareness, get the content out there, get people watching it. It does make a huge difference. You remind me, as you're talking then, actually, I hadn't had this as something to talk about, but it is interesting, which is you did some stuff around fighting as well, right? In China some time ago, the white collar boxing.
Yes, boxing,
stuff.
yes.
It's funny, I was just thinking about this the other day, because I don't know whether you watch the UFC, and it's that whole, you know, the whole fighting space during COVID has been, Dana White's done an incredible job of keeping that alive. But I know you did, the stuff you did was different. It was what, the white collar boxing in China, is that right? I remember
Shanghai,
it in Shanghai. How was that? And Mike Tyson was involved in that, right? I've seen pictures of you with.
No, he wasn't involved in
Mike.
it. I just met him because I was doing it, and he was
okay.
interested to talk about it, and I met him a couple of times. And that was
cool.
that was my introduction to boxing. Actually, I didn't know particularly anything about boxing up to that point, but I did that series, which was an 8-part series, and we shot the whole entire thing in Shanghai with people learning to box and then eventually fighting in a ring in front of, you know, 2,000 people.
These are like the office lads, that one that they used to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they were just regular people. They were just like you and me, you know, but there was, you know, they were just, I mean, people who had never done boxing before, all of them.
Except younger, maybe.
Except younger, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be doing it right now, but
exactly. So anyway, that was interesting. I really enjoyed making that series. It was good fun, and I think it turned out pretty well as well, actually.
Oh, cool. I mean, you've been making content around the region for years. How's it changed? Like that's a big question, I know, because there's many elements to filmmaking, but is it, I mean, when you think back to the kind of mid-90s, you were saying, I mean, that's some time ago, the equipment's changed, the method of filmmaking's changed, the way of getting content out there has changed. I mean, you've kind of been through it and watched the industry change. And I don't know, and this is my perception as someone who's been in it slightly, but more on the outside. I mean, it feels for me the last 10 years, particularly, certainly on the selling side of media and how it's consumed, has drastically changed. And yeah, I mean, what are those changes you've seen? What's the good, the bad of that? You know, do you prefer it today? Was it better back then, or a bit of both? Yeah.
God, there's so much in there it's hard to know where to start with that. Well, the bit that I know less about, so I'll kind of leave that part, is the sort of
Let me
distribution.
ask in a different way to make it easier. Then, is it easier to make? Is it easier today than it was 20 years ago? That's probably, that question could be answered in a number of different ways as well.
Yes.
I know.
So let me.
Yeah.
It depends what you mean by easier. It's more accessible. So, just for example, just getting your hands on the equipment. When I was first shooting stuff even in the early 2000s, I made this documentary called Marco Polo for National Geographic, and all of that was shot on film. You have to have, so you can't just pick up the camera and shoot it yourself. You've got to have you need at least two people to just around the camera, and that's really small for operating a film camera, because the clapper loader needs to also be the focus puller as well if you're doing stuff with tricky focus pulls, and loading the film in and out, and it's heavy equipment, and it weighs way more than these modern cameras now. So, and shooting aerials, you really need to either get up in a hot air balloon or a helicopter. Now you just take a drone and it fits in your hand luggage. It's and the quality is pretty good. And you get a slightly bigger one, you can even fix different lenses on it. So you're not even reliant on just a big super wide lens. I mean, what you can do, and the accessibility of the equipment, it basically means anybody could go out and make content.
Yeah.
When you say easy, it doesn't make it, the challenge of the storytelling is always there. So just because it's more, I think it means that a couple of things: a well-crafted, well-made, well-executed, well-thought-through film is still a very difficult thing to do. Just because the equipment is more accessible doesn't mean to say that it's easier to make a really good film. I think people's tolerance of quality is different.
Yeah.
It's perfectly acceptable to put in iPhone footage or footage that's, if it's archive of something that really happened, but it's shot by someone who happened to be there seeing it. That was it was an incident that happened. That's archive footage, which might not be the best quality, but it's important for the narrative. It's perfectly acceptable to use that in a documentary without compromising the overall. You can put that in around stuff that's been professionally shot, and it works. If you made an entire film like that, people might just not be able to take the fact that the camera's wobbling all over the place, poorly framed, that the audio is terrible. You couldn't make an entire film like that necessarily, but using it as archive is fine. So I think the way people's they sort of consume their content is very different from how it was, when we grew up in the UK, for example. You're used to seeing things properly shot. Camera doesn't move as dynamically. All of these kind of things.
It's very interesting when you look at movies. I mean, the kind of CGI element to movies, which has been around for some time, but obviously makes it easier. In certain ways, if you want to recreate something that's on a page in a script. Does it make it better? It's massively debatable. So my girlfriend and I've been watching movies from like the mid-90s recently. I forget the one with Tommy Lee Jones, and I mean the storytelling. I don't know whether I feel like a bit of a moaning older person when I do this. The films were so much better, but it does seem to be there is this the kind of mass audience consumption of the superhero movies, the obvious ones. I mean, it does seem to be a lot of expensive crap that is pumped out there now, and there's still some nuggets of artistic wisdom in there as well. But I do wonder how much has changed, whether the audience just doesn't hunger for great stories in the same way, and just the way people respond to online content films. They want to be kind of punched in the head with effects, and yeah, it's different than it was 30 years ago. But I do feel there's a lack of decent stuff out there, and just from my own personal view of churning through stuff on Netflix and looking at older movies and some of the great stories, and yeah, I do wonder whether the ease has maybe disrupted to a level where there's, you have to really go and find the great stories these days, because it's buried under a lot of not so great stuff,
Well, I mean, if you go to film festivals around the world, you realize that there's a lot of very good films being made that don't necessarily get seen, in your local cinema. But they might appear, they'll certainly appear at film festivals here and there, and they might get local distribution, and they might appear in, if they're lucky, they might appear in airline movies that carry lots of foreign films, like Emirates or Cathay or Singapore Airlines, for example. But the main blockbusters, they sort of take the limelight, don't they?
Yeah.
When you say crap, I mean, it's the effects and the art, the way they're executed is unbelievably good. That bit isn't crap. The way they're shot is unbelievably good. It's the story you're talking about. It's how it grips you on an emotional level. It's just it's very, they try to bring a bit of, if the actors can bring a bit of depth to it, that's great. But there's only so much they can do with the script they have. So if you sort of go and watch, I don't know, superheroes movie, don't be surprised that it doesn't have that much depth.
Yeah, the one that sticks in my head is I think Batman versus Superman, which is probably not a good benchmark for great.
I've never seen it. I don't intend to go and waste my time, to be honest. So is it crap? I mean, to a degree, I suppose. Yeah, it's not my cup of tea particularly, but then I think there is a place for these things. People want to be. Some people just want to go and be entertained. And people don't want to go and see something that's thought provoking because they're tired. They just want to sit in front of something, and not talk about. We're talking about well-educated, people who would want to do that as well. It's not people who aren't educated particularly. It's you would see people of our age who have university degrees. All they want to do at the end of the day is sit in front of something and be entertained. That's it. Not interested in anything else. Plenty of people like that. That's why they're so popular.
Indeed.
Nothing wrong with that to some extent. There's also a place for more thought-provoking material as well. And it might be the mood you're in, whether you want to go and see something like that.
On the flip side, actually, I'm not going to contradict myself, but I just saw is it Nomad, the film that just won?
Nomadland, yeah.
Nomadland. I haven't seen it. Have you seen it? I mean,
just
looking at that, it looks good, and I forget her name, but I know that you particularly like her acting. She's been in some great movies that I know we both like. So I look forward to watching that, and hopefully it is.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be a decent movie. So I look forward to kind of watching that when I get time.
Yeah, me too. I haven't seen it either.
How long did you always know you wanted to be in this space, making movies, directing? Was it something you as a young man all those years ago that you, I think
even as a boy?
Really? Were you doing? I mean, were you doing what? You were mucking around doing stuff. Was it kind of obvious you wanted to take this path?
Well, I went to art college straight from school. I did art went to art college. Was always had a camera in my hand. Did sort of as soon as I was able to, worked out where the on button was and how to take the lens cap off and started shooting stuff and made stuff. And as part of the college, the course I did it encouraged you to try different things. So some people, I particularly did filmmaking. Yeah. But other people went off and did all sorts of other things. And the degree I did was graphic design actually, but as part of that, I spent a lot of time filmmaking. So yes, I was happy as Larry when I was making stuff. It wasn't very good, but at least I made a start.
And that was on the cusp of analog to digital, right? I imagine back then, was it when everything was
It was on the cusp
shifting?
of analog to digital. So everything was on tape. You had Betacam tapes, and then you had digital Betacam tapes. And it was like, oh my God, digital Betacam, that's the top of the line. And then when you really got good, they started trusting you with shooting on film.
Yeah, I mean, I had a few years in a recording studio back then, different, but some similarities. But it was when we went from, everything went from splicing tape to DATs, and it was a massive shift in
massive shift. When we were doing sound recording, it was all on tape. There was just reams of tape everywhere that was recorded onto. So we'd record a voiceover, and all these reels were going around, and then he would literally cut bits out physically. It's unbelievable. I mean, and if you think about it, the technology, the principle is the same now. You still cut and splice. It's just a non-physical thing.
Yeah, I can remember doing it. That was my job. It was like and then cutting through with a knife and then sticking bits together. Now you do it on a computer. I mean, it's just in the digital realm rather than the physical realm. But yeah, ultimately,
but the process is still the same. You still got to try it. You still got to put two shots together, for example, see if they work. If they don't, you try something else, or cut at a different point. That's always been the way. It's just how you do it is a bit different. It's arguably quicker to do it these days, so it gives you more flexibility in terms of trying things out because you can do it quicker. Certainly better than tape to tape. You had to dump off the 10 minutes that after the cut. You sort of say, oh, I want to put a shot in there. I mean, it was a nightmare.
Things have changed. So what's next, Jonathan? What's on the? You're in Hong Kong. You're back in Asia, and what's next on the horizon for you?
Well, now that I'm here, I'm sort of just re-establishing my contacts in Hong Kong and the region. Just won a pitch actually for a job with a production company in Singapore, which I'm going to be shooting virtually for a client. So it's kind of branded content. So that's good. That's the kind of bread and butter level of work. But on the bigger picture, I'm partnering with the production company that I worked with in the UK to make the elephant film on a number of other projects, which one of which is another elephant project, and they've got a few other ones in the pipeline as well. One of them, in fact, involves going back to Pakistan, which that's the one I'm really looking forward to be honest, because I loved Pakistan.
Awesome. I've never been there. Obviously been to India a lot, but yeah, you loved the place. Did you just in terms of shooting there, or just culturally and
everything?
You got some time off there, did you as well?
Didn't get so much time off, but we were on our off day. We went up to Peshawar, which is on the Afghanistan border, and I brought the camera with me because I knew we would get good visuals. So it was kind of a sort of a relaxed shooting day. I didn't even have a camera assistant. It was just me, the executive producer, and my location producer, all of whom come from the UK. We just went up there for a day out, and with a view that they would give me time to shoot stuff. So got some really nice visuals when just as we were driving into the city, there was a road with all of these incredible vehicles, these things that are stacked way high. You've seen it before in Thailand.
It's everywhere here, yeah.
Being pulled by buffaloes and trucks that are painted amazing colors and incredibly busy and higgledy-piggledy all over the place. Stuff going in all sorts of directions. Didn't seem to be any organization at all, but no one ever crashed into anyone else. So, you stop there for sort of 45 minutes and just let me get on the long lens and pick out some nice shots. And all those shots made it, those shots were sprinkled in here and there. And just some local color to remind you where you are rather than just shots of the zoo. Could be anywhere.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you get up there again soon. So
yeah.
if people want to follow you, want to look at some of your work, what is it? Vimeo, I assume, is the best place. Do you want to? Is that the best place to go and look at some of your work? Do you want
I've
to
got a
share your
Vimeo
Vimeo
site,
channel?
but
And
I'm terrible, you know.
I'll put the link in the notes, but sorry, go on. I'll put the link in the notes, but share it as well.
Yeah. So thank you for that. Yes. I'm terrible at my own PR. So I did have a website which was ancient. I've now just revamped it because I've realized that with this elephant thing that people are going to be looking me up, which they are. So I've just replaced that with a single page. It's luckydevilfilms.com.
Cool.
And if you go to that, you'll see a single page with a link, a Vimeo link to the rest of my work. And on the front page, there's the trailer of my elephant film with Cher, and a review from Variety, and a short paragraph on who I am. But if you want to, then there's a link, the Vimeo link. Lucky Devil Films is where you would see my work. Vimeo.com/Lucky Devil Films.
All right. Well, luckydevilfilms.com, and people can go and find out more. So yeah, excellent. Well, look, it's been good to catch up, to chat.
Yeah, you too as well. Yeah, nice to see you. It's been a while, hasn't it?
It has.
When things get better, hopefully we can meet up in Thailand and
let's hope so. I got a feeling it's going to be a bit longer, but unfortunately, otherwise we could go and watch some Lions rugby in about 3 months. But I think it's highly unlikely we're going to be watching that anywhere in this country.
Seems like it, doesn't it?
So yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, look, good to chat. Take care, and yeah, we shall definitely cross paths physically again at some point in the future.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. Nice to see you, mate. And I'd like to just tell me where the podcast is. I probably won't listen to the whole thing again, but be nice to sort of see it placed somewhere.
I will share it with you for sure.
Terrific. Thank you.
All right, mate. Cheers.
All right. Look after yourself.
And you.
Bye.
Bye.
You have to walk up the long road into the zoo, and I could see him from the distance. He was shackled. He was suffering. Elephants are just like we are. They're so family-oriented and emotional. And so I wanted to free him.
They're incredibly intelligent animals. He was just moving back and forth. This behavior is from severe mental or physical neglect.
They need company, they need love and affection.
Kavan was in a terrible state. It was absolutely shocking.
What does it take to relocate a 5-ton elephant across the entire continent of Asia?
It's a huge challenge.
We put together the right team. We had to get him out.
And when your heart is on the run, do you believe in miracles? I will always be the one to carry you out.
Kavan's journey really shows the power of people.
I never thought this is something that people would love all over the world. We just didn't stop fighting
to carry you home.
Two were Muhammad Ali and Sonny Barger, the president of Hell's Angels.
This is 1095.